Okay, we're ready recording. Okay, tonight I'm afraid there's quite a few slides, and it's going to have to go. We're going to have to go quite quickly. I hope it's not going to be as interactive as the last lot that we had, but we're into project quality tonight. So quality management, things we need to do for quality management in managing project quality. It's not too different from any other quality system, so let's get on with that one. Remember we said right in the beginning when we're doing the integrative processes that time and cost and scope need to be balanced to provide quality. So there's our triangle. If we take time and we move it slightly, it's going to get out of balance with the cost and the scope. So it's not enough just to make sure that you get the project done on time or on budget. It's also very important to make sure that the requirements are met as well. So there are just a few principles that we need to look at. And the question that I have for you tonight is testing good enough? Testing is about checking to be sure that the product does what it's supposed to do. And we've got to say, well, if the most important concept in defining quality for PMP is conformance to requirements, then is testing good enough? And I think after tonight, I'm hesitant to guess that you would say, no, it's not enough. We need to be able to plan for quality as well. We've got to take into account the cost of quality. So there are a few other things that we've got to take into consideration when we're looking at quality. Here are some of the principles that have just come out of quality. So if we want to look at quality close-up, so some here are the concepts. Customer satisfaction. Okay, customer is king. All right, customer satisfaction. A customer marches with his feet. So if he doesn't like your product or he doesn't like your service, then normally he disappears. Very seldom do customers tell you why they're moving. So customer satisfaction at the end of the day is a quality concept that we need to bring into projects. Customer satisfaction has often got to do with your stakeholders and with your client or sponsor. In other words, you've got to be able to meet your sponsor's needs, your client's needs, and your stakeholders. The customer is the person that's purchasing the product or service from you. So customer satisfaction is a critical aspect of a project manager and what you must look at. Right, and the another one is fit for use. Okay, beautifully designed is great, but does it do what it's supposed to do? Right, there's Joseph Duran. I know that he's a quality guru that's been around quite some time, and we can have the most beautiful product, but if it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, it's useless to anyone. So fit for use is incredibly important. That means we've got to also budget things to make sure that it is fit for use. In other words, we'll talk about that in a minute about grades. You get high grades and low grades, but what's important is a low-grade product might be a very high quality, okay, and a high-grade product might be a lousy quality because it might look beautiful, but it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. Okay, so that's what we're looking at when we say fit for use. The other one is conformance to requirements. The ability to conform to requirements is really quite important. And that really came from Crosby in the 1980s, that concept. Another one is the Japanese concept of continuous improvement. What they would do with all their, I think it started with Toyota, but most of the other motor manufacturers as well, is that they wanted to see tighter and tighter tolerances. And they didn't expect, if they went out to a vendor to provide something for the motor cars or a subcontractor, what they would do is that they would look for an improvement every time that they did an order, so that the tolerances got tighter and tighter. Right, so that is the whole idea of continuous improvement. And management responsibility is another important thing. So if we want total quality management, then management needs to be involved in it as well. Now, those are some of the concepts that we need to remember when we're going through here, or through this thing tonight. Andrew, are you hearing me all right now? I'll check that. Can you just, if I'm still cutting in and out, can you just tell me? Can you just tell me if I'm okay? Otherwise, I must do something. You just put your hands up if it's okay. Okay. Anthony Gray's happy. All right. Then I'm going to go on. Let's talk about grades first. Quality versus grade. It's obviously that a lobster is a high-grade meal. It's going to cost you a lot of money, and it's a high-grade meal. All right. A hot dog is a low-grade meal. But your hot dog could be a high quality if that's what you wanted to get. All right. But they are both of low quality if you actually ordered a salad and this is what came to you. Even the lobster at the cost, and you ordered a salad and you got a lobster, you would not be happy with that restaurant. If you ordered a hot dog, even though it's a low grade, I mean, if you got a hot dog and it was a low grade, and you ordered and you got a salad, well, you wouldn't be happy. So when we talk about a high grade thing and a low grade, there can be various grades. I'll come back, Roz. Okay, so that's what we mean by high grade and low grade. Let's look at another one. It's in the motor car industry. You obviously have Lexus. You have the Lexus range and you have the Toyota range. The whole idea was to have a high grade range. One that would compete with luxury cars, another one that would compete in the normal car range. So a Camry would compete in a different range to what a Lexus would compete. All right, both of them would be considered high quality. All right, let's just take it from that perspective. So there's another way of looking at this. The next thing that we need to look at when we're looking at quality is this whole idea of an ounce of prevention. Okay, now that's why I said that is testing good enough? Well, when it comes to defects, prevention is always better than inspection. Inspection costs money. So if you can plan for defect prevention, then it is... Andrew is really having a problem hearing me tonight. Can I just ask another question? Am I cutting out for everybody, or is it just Andrew that's having the problem? Okay, I just got that one's fine. Oh dear. So Roz is also having a bit of a problem. Okay. All right. I'm not too sure why we're having the problem tonight. It might be many other things. I will record this, so well, it has been recorded, so I'm pretty sure that if some of you are getting me okay, then the recording will be fine. So I'm going to just have to, if it cuts in and out, then I suggest that when I put the recording up tomorrow that you would be able. All right. Let's go on. Let's look at where in the project life cycle where quality comes in. There's three processes that are associated with quality, and the first one, quality planning, obviously comes in the planning part of the project life cycle, both in the initiation and in the planning, and then monitoring and control. We actually see that performance assurance or quality assurance comes in the executing part of the project, and quality control comes in the monitoring and control part, all right, and in the feedback loop. controlling is really important for feedback. So what we're looking at is the quality planning is creating a quality management plan, which will help guide the team through the quality activities. Okay, we're going to look at what the inputs for that are, what some of the techniques and methods are, what should come out of that. Obviously, we're going to use what comes out of that for the quality assurance, which ensures the projects fit in with the company's overall quality standards and guidelines. Then finally, we have the project quality control, which is your master and control, if you like, your process where you look at each deliverable and inspect it for defects. You inspect, so it's really looking at that and making sure that it actually fits what the customer wants. Right, so that's where we are. There's quite a few slides, so I'm going to go through quite quickly. But let's look at what quality planning is. But before I do, are there any questions at the moment? Have we got some of the concepts of quality in? Is there anything that I need to explain a little bit more? Okay, then let's go on. So the first process that we need to look at is the quality planning. And this process, we need to identify the standards, the quality standards. What are the standards that we're going to do? And this is part planning actually is critical for setting your metrics and your parameters to make sure that we can satisfy them during the execution phase of the project. So we need the environmental factors, we need the organizational processes and the scope statement and the project management plan. Let's take each one of those and see how important it is for us. Okay, so the first one is your environmental factors. Remember them? I've got that thing there. It's all those government agencies and regulations and rules and guidelines. That's your environmental factors. And then your next one would be your organizational processes. That's your quality management. Okay. Andrew, I'm not going to be able to help you too much on that one, I'm afraid. So I'm pretty sure that it will go up to the server effectively. So if you, my suggestion is that you, when I put the link to the tomorrow, that if you don't get me, then you can hear the recording. I'm really sorry that you can't get anything. The organizational quality and policies and procedures and guidelines and lessons learned. So that is part of your process, your organizational process assets. Your project scope statement is going to help you define your deliverables and the objectives if it's a service, and to define the requirements, and more importantly and most importantly, it is that acceptance. Okay, Andrew, I think that'll be better. Okay, defines the deliverables and objectives that define the requirements. Most important thing is your acceptance criteria. Okay, and that you define in your scope. What is someone going to sign off? So when they sign it off, they say that they're happy with it. So you do that up front. Remember, I said it's really critical to get it signed off up front. Okay, and then there's your project management plan, which is going to also give you guidance in terms of how long something should take, how much resources should be in there, what you can expect. So your project management plan is an important input into the techniques and tools that we're going to be using. So now let's have a look at some of these tools and techniques. All right, here are the tools and techniques. Let's have a look at them. The first one is your cost-benefit analysis. Now, there's always a trade-off with quality. And that is that we need to get to the optimum level of meeting that quality requirements against the value that is obtained. Okay, this reminds me a lot of Rank Xerox. In the 80s, Rank Xerox produced a fantastic photocopier, and the only problem is that the Japanese were infiltrating the market at a very high rate. And they said, well, why are they doing that? Well, the cost of their machines were a lot higher than was expected, and they had to pay a lot higher maintenance costs. And often it was nearly 3 times. They could buy three times the amount of copiers for the same copier and throw it out 3 times before, at the same price that Rank Xerox would. That's what they actually found out about with that one. So they realized that it's important that your cost-benefit analysis on your quality is done. So if that machine, if the copier broke and they could buy another one, it was still going to be cheaper to do that over the period of time. And so we need to consider the cost-benefit trade-off. The next one that's important is your benchmarking, and that's comparing the actual or planned practices to other projects or other things that have done in a similar way. Benchmarking will actually give you, or should give you, an external mark against which your project can be measured. External to your project, and possibly even external to the organization that you're doing it for. Right, benchmarking is a good tool in quality to make sure that you're meeting what's out in the marketplace. Right, the next one is the design of experiments. Okay, when we're looking at that, we're looking at a statistical method that assists with identifying factors that may influence variables. A car manufacturer is a good example in determining a combination of suspension and tires. Okay, now we want a most comfortable ride, but at the same time as if your suspension is too soft, it's going to wear down your tires. So there is this experimentation that happens with your suspension and your tires to get the optimal, reasonable cost. Okay, so we want the most reasonable cost, and there's a trade-off on both ones, on your suspension and on your tires. The only way to do it is to actually do some experiments on that, and that's why a lot of experimentation is done on tires and suspension. Let's go on to the cost quality. Cost of quality is a really important issue. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your total costs incurred in investing into that and preventing non-conformance. If you don't try and cost that out, you may find that your product is too expensive, or you may find that you overrun in your project. Failure cost is really the cost of poor quality. So failure cost is the cost of poor quality. So if you are looking at costs and you have a very high failure rate, it could push the cost of your product or your service out of the bracket that becomes valuable anymore. So your client is it could be looking at terminating a project because the cost of poor quality. Right, so that's both internal, that's in your processes, your internal processes, and external, what you're going to deliver to your client. So the cost of quality needs to be calculated up front when you do your planning. And then there are a host of other additional quality planning tools, which I'm not going to get into, but are in your textbooks. So I don't really want to get into some of those tools, but they are things like brainstorming, affinity diagrams, force field analysis, nominal group techniques, matrix diagrams, flowcharts, prioritization. They are in there. I just don't want to go into them tonight, otherwise we won't finish. Okay, now we've looked at the inputs for quality planning. We've looked at the techniques that we're doing. So let's just have a look at some of the outputs that we're going to be using. The first output that's going to come out is obviously your quality management plan, and that's going to address how you're going to institute your quality control and your quality assurance, and obviously your continuous improvement. I want to say something for a project manager is that you really need to, as a project manager, plan on your management is to make those lessons learned as quickly as possible, and your continuous improvement is to really monitor the quality right in the front of the project. The earlier you monitor that and reduce the defects in your project, the more cost effective your project is going to be, and the better fit you're going to have it towards the end. So one of the most important things in quality management plan is to try and cost in the front of your project and try and do as many of the quality tests that you can right up front, because that'll actually help your project all the way through. The second output are the project metrics. Those are all the things that you're going to use to measure that your product is reliable, that you're going to find a way to measure the failure rate, the availability, the defects. So all of those things, how must it be measured? So that is the output of your quality management plan. So the second one are your quality metrics, right? To make sure that you are measuring the right things when you're measuring quality. And then obviously checklists. Checklists are form a part of your project management, your quality management plan. And the checklists are there to make sure that no steps are left out of your process, right? To make sure that the process of producing your service or producing your product, that no steps are left out, which could cause problematic and defects. Right up front in your quality planning, one of your outputs should be your process improvement plan. Now, you normally get that from your quality manual and your quality management manual, and that is where you're going to probably get your improvement plan. But I'm going to say one thing now again. I'm going to say that you need to do this right up front. The quicker you get your improvements going, the better that your project is going to be towards the end. So you need to look at what the process is for improving your plan, for improving your project right up front. And there should be a continuous improvement throughout your project. So you need to look for those. Those are the steps. Again, you're going to analyze the process and identify wasted steps. Now you're going to say, well, why do I need to do that on all projects? You probably don't. On smaller projects, you probably don't have to worry about it too much. But the bigger the project, and the earlier you analyze your processes, the more value you're going to make for both the client and for the stakeholders. Another output is actually your baseline. Now we've talked about your cost baseline. We've talked about a resourcing baseline. We've talked about a scoping base or a deliverable baseline. Now the quality also has a baseline. All right. So you've planned. So your baseline is the plan that you're going to actually do. Your selection, your sign-off criteria, your metrics, your checklists, your improvement plan. All of those form part of the basis for measuring your quality performance. And that is actually what you would call your quality baseline. So this is the baseline. You're going to measure everything from your baseline. And obviously you're going to update your you're going to update your project plan with these outputs. So these form part of your project management plan. Now, that's the first part. So we've actually planned that. Planned your quality. Now we need to make sure that the quality is actually implemented. So here are some of the inputs for this one. There are a lot of inputs on this one. So I'm going to try and go through them as quickly as possible. Your first one is obviously your quality management plan. That's what you're going to use to describe how your quality assurance will be performed. You're going to have your metrics, which measures the quality. So that's going to come from your quality management plan. And your metrics are going to tell you how to measure the quality. You're going to have your process improvement plan, which you're going to use to describe what processes or how your processes are going to be continually improved. Your work performance information, or your technical performance measures, your deliverable status, your corrective actions, its performance reports, used in audits and the quality reviews that you're going to do and your process analysis. Now of course you're going to do a process analysis. That's the whole thing with a project, is that that's why you try and get your critical path, and you're going to try and analyze that so that you can ensure that you're going to keep to your critical path, and your process analysis is going to help you improve those processes as well as your product. Another input is going to be your approved change requests. When changes are required, your valuable inputs are going to go into your quality assurance, and they can highlight areas of attention. Your quality control measures are results of your quality control activities are fed back into quality assurance. So your quality control measurements become the baseline for actually making sure that you feed back into your quality assurance what you're monitoring. Now the last three I'm going to do, or the last four I'm going to do together, because these inputs are important and can highlight the trends in areas for improvement. And those are your change requests, your corrective active plans, your defect repair, and your preventative actions. Those four things should be taken together as something to watch out for and to have a look at for areas of improvement. So you look at your change requests. How many change requests are you getting? Why are those change requests there? Why are we getting corrective actions? What are the things that are causing defects? Your defect repair, how many defects are you doing? So all of these things are things to actually help you monitor the quality of so that you can meet requirements, your client's expectations. All right, so now we're getting on to assurance. Are all those inputs? If you're happy with those inputs, then I will go on. If there are any questions with those inputs, I will take them now. No questions. Okay. Let's look at performing quality assurance. What techniques are we going to do to perform that quality assurance? So what are we doing? We're applying a systematic quality activities to ensure that all your processes are used to meet the needed requirements. Right? So let's have a look at some of the quality planning tools and techniques. We're going to take into your quality assurance. Okay, so the same tools that you actually used for planning, such as your cost-benefit analysis, your benchmarking, your design of experiments, your cost of quality, can all be used also in your quality assurance. Okay. Next tool that you can use is actually your audit. There's two kinds of audits. You can have scheduled or you can have random audits. But these audits actually look at a number of issues. They look at your processes, they look at your corrective actions, they look at the change requests, your defect repairs, and your preventative actions. So your quality audits is an important thing to actually go through as a project manager and to check some of these things out. Right? And now one of the most important things, I think, is your process analysis. If you're implementing a large project, let's say a technology project, your process is quite important when it comes to, in the areas of training, in the areas of aligning the business to your new product. Okay, so that is actually quite an important part of implementing something. So you need to look at those processes and see if you can improve them. If you can remember, I said to you, if someone's going to tile 1,000 bathrooms in a new hotel, then you need to look at both the processes and the quality of the product that's finished, your finished product, and see how you can improve it up front. Because the quicker you can do that, again, I'm going to say it, the quicker you can do it, the more efficient you're going to become towards the end. So let's say at your first bathroom, you actually take a really close look at how you can actually improve it. You analyze what activities could be cut down, what activities need to be improved on so that you can get a better quality and a better speed and a better process to actually lay the tiles and to do those things, to implement or to execute your tiling. So if you've got 1,000 of them, by the end you should be actually a lot better at actually implementing it, both from a time and a cost perspective. So that's your process analysis, which needs to happen as a project manager as well. So the final one is your quality control tools and techniques, which we will now discuss in a minute or two. All right, so your tools and techniques that you use in quality planning can be used in assurance, and your tools that you're going to use in your control can also be used in your assurance. So these tools that we're talking about, and the reason why we can do that is because really it's your quality management supports the process that you go through when you're doing your project. So it's actually a support process. So every part of your project is going to have the same tools and techniques applied to them. So let's have a look at our final one this evening. All right, and that is what are the outputs for your quality assurance? That will be your requested changes. Your requested changes. Your recommended corrective actions. Your organizational process assets are going to be updated, and your project management plan is going to be updated. That's because you're going to go through an iteration, and I said that when you're doing your and executing your project, you're going to be continually planning new things, and it's really from your improvement perspective. So your continuous improvement is going to force you to plan, execute, monitor, and control. So that will go into a loop until you've completed your project and finish your closeout. So it will be an iterative thing, and it should improve as you go along in the project. Now, let's look at your change requests. There should be an increase in effectiveness and efficiency if we are getting requested changes. There should be an increase in the effectiveness and the efficiency when we've identified these changes. Secondly, corrective actions are really your quality improvement that you are recommending as a result of quality assurance. And you're certainly going to update your quality manual and your knowledge management. And you're going to update your project management plan. Well, you're going to make changes to your quality management plan, and therefore you're going to make changes to your project management plan as well. Because your quality management plan forms part of your project management plan. Now, let's have a look at quality management. Before I do, are there any questions on quality assurance? Okay, let me go on. So, quality control is the process of monitoring specific project results to determine whether they comply with the quality standards that you've already planned, and you're going to look for ways to eliminate any unsatisfactory performance. Okay, it's your responsibility as a project manager to eliminate causes of unsatisfactory performance. So here are your inputs to this. Your project management plan, your quality management plan is important. So that's going to give you all your guidelines to what you're going to do. Your project metrics. Okay, so that's how you're going to measure it, is with the metrics that you've defined up front. You're going to use your checklists that you define on your quality assurance and your planning. You're going to be using all the quality manual that you got from your organizational, so to ensure that you comply with the quality guidelines and your policies and the procedures. Another one is your work performance information, planned and expected results compared with the actual results. So you're going to continually look at what you have got against your expected results, against your actual results. The final one is your approved change requests. Right? And then obviously the deliverables themselves are what you're going to look at as an input to your quality. So your deliverables are what you're going to inspect to make sure that they comply. So there are a lot of tools and techniques for this one. So let's have a look at them. The first one we're going to look at is your cause and effect diagram. Okay, so if we look at a cause and effect diagram, you're going to see that you have major defects, you have a potential causes and effect, and then you have material and your environment, your methods, personnel, and all of those will be cumulative to look at a major defect. So you're going to look at it. So the whole idea of a fishbone one is to identify all the possible causes of it and to see how they're going to impact by looking at the branching out of them. Let me show you an example that the person that actually put this course together for me, she used this one. She said, well, how did the Nazis rule Germany? And she looked at that one of the causes of doing it would have been propaganda. Another one would have been terror. Another one would have been censorship. Another one would have been achievements. So let's look at some of the achievements. They were very effective in their foreign policy, and it restored the German pride. They had order in conscription. That unemployment was solved. So there were a whole lot of branches to that one. So there are your achievements. To show you, you've got achievements. And then you break it down into some of the other things there. So you've got a fishbone coming out over here. And you've got your fishbone coming out along the axis over here. So there are many things that you've got that will accumulate to say, well, this is the end result. And what you're going to look at is all of the things that would actually cause that. So that's a cause and effect diagram. Another tool that you can use are control charts. Okay, let's have a look at a control chart. What we want to do is find the values between the median and your upper level, or your upper control point, and your lower control point. And what you want to do is measure and see if anything exceeds your upper level and your lower level. So it's a tool to actually look at to find out if you're going to exceed your tolerances. Right? So it's a good way to look at tolerances is to chart your values and to find out where we're exceeding. So so a good indicator will be, for example, this one down here, where it exceeded your lower limit, and this one up top here exceeded your upper limit. You're not too worried about anything in between, but you would be worried about this one, and you would be worried about this one. So you want to, as a project manager, you're going to look for anything that's outside of the norms with your control. So that's a control chart. It helps you identify things that exceed an upper limit and a lower limit. Right, the next one that we have is flow charting. Flow charting is very useful for identifying steps that are inefficient, or steps that could be cut out completely, or steps that actually enhance your value. That's what a flow chart does. And then you can actually make process improvements by identifying the activities that are inefficient or by bypassing some of them in some cases. All right, a histogram is really useful for identifying areas that go above a tolerance as well. So if we look at queue times in minutes, so if we have a PABX and you've got an ACD in that PABX, that's an automatic call distributor, and it's got a queue in it, all right, and you suddenly find out that the queue times are exceeding what the operators can what the operators can handle, then you know that you've got to do something about it. And then you want to see how many times those queue times were exceeded. And then anything that goes beyond your particular metric, you want to, as a project, so here's another tool that you can actually use to identify areas. Now, next one we're going to get to is the Pareto chart. And what Pareto's law actually says is that a relatively small number of causes, are typically going to produce a large majority of defects. And it was what he called his 80-20 principle, or his 80-20 rule. So as a project manager, what you really want to do is identify those things. Don't go and try and fix everything, but identify those things that are causing the most trouble. So let's have a look at a Pareto chart. It's really a three-dimensional array. Okay, if you look on the left-hand side, over here, if I can. So this is your left-hand. Whoa, stop something here. All right. On the left-hand side here, you'll get the actual occurrences of something. And on the other side, you're going to get a percentage, a cumulative percentage. So the line that you're seeing along here is the cumulative percentage of, let's call it, on this particular one, of late arrivals reported by cause. So the causes happen along the bottom here. So traffic is a cause, childcare is a cause, public transport is a cause, weather, overslept, and emergency. Now, if you take the cumulative one, let's look at the number on here. So here you have 54, or it'll be more than 50, 50,4. So if I'm looking over here, you'll see that your first one is traffic. Okay, and your first one actually accounts for 30% of the reported causes. And if you add your cumulative one to the second one, you're going to see it reaches already 60%. Now, let's say that if we're using Pareto's, saying that a relatively small amount of defects defects is going to cause, if we can fix those ones, then we need to concentrate on that one. So let's say it at 80%. I'll draw a line over here. Let's say at 80%, of your cumulative total, we'll see that it's really only three causes that make the most impact on late arrivals. Okay, so if we go down here, we'll see we only have to then concentrate on the traffic, the childcare, and the transportation. That's a Pareto chart. Then we can have a look at a running chart. or a run chart. This is a line graph that shows data points plotted in the order in which they occur. Alright, so it plots it in the order in which they occur, and this shows a history and a pattern of variation. So if we look at that, what we see here is that we have the average, but we've got a target of somewhere around 3. So here are the number of complaints, and this is the days that they actually had the complaints. So this actually helps us identify what days actually cause the most complaints. Right? So here we find that really it starts around day 4 and goes all the way up to day 18 are the days that we have the most number of complaints. And then we got, maybe we changed something in the process, got the average, and then obviously we got better and better at it, and we overproduced in our target. So a running chart can actually help us to identify a running chart can actually help us identify something from 2 axes. Right, now let's have a look at a scatter diagram, and really we're looking at the relationship of 2 variables. A dependent versus an independent relationship shown shape of lines. So let's just have a look at some of these ones here. There's 2 important ones here, and you can actually start seeing a correlation. Here we can actually get a decent correlation because you'll see that the 2 variables are fairly close to one another. So we would say that that is a high negative correlation. Okay, here's a high positive correlation between the 2 variables. When we look at the low negative and a low positive, we see that they are much more scattered. Okay, there is some sort of correlation, but it's not very clear at all. Okay, and here we'll see that there's no correlation. So if we can find a correlation between 2 variables, then what we can do is act upon that one. So that's the reason for scatter diagrams. And identify and have a look and see if 2 variables actually correlate between two axes. We can actually do something about it. So that's where you can use scatter diagrams. The next one is obviously your inspection. So you need to inspect it, look at the product or the service against the criteria, the acceptance criteria, and make sure that it actually conforms. Normally it's a single activity in your final review. Another way to do it is if there's soft issues that are required, then peer review and audits and walkthroughs can actually help as well. So they actually make sure, so a walkthrough would be in a programming, when you've developed an algorithm, you can do a walkthrough with that to actually inspect and to make sure that it's going to meet the requirements. Another tool for a project manager is the defect repair, and that's a review of all the repairs and the process to repair to ensure conformance. So those are all the tools that we actually have to perform quality control. So there's quite a few of them. Now obviously you don't have to use all of these, but there are tools and techniques that can actually help us. So what is the output of that? What is the output of quality control? Well, the first one is that we can get quality control measurements. Alright, so we can actually measure it and use that measurement in the feedback. We can get a validated defect repair. We can update our quality baseline. Hopefully it improves it all the time. We will get recommended corrective actions. We can get preventative actions, which is even better. We'll get changes or requested changes to improve the project. We'll get recommended defect repairs. We can update our quality manual, the organizational assets. We will have validated deliverables. which is really important in a lot of instances. And then we're going to update the project management plan. So let's have a look at the final one, and then you can tell me whether quality is the most important thing on the project or not after reading the following cartoon. So my question tonight is: quality the most important thing that ever can be done? We need to remember our triangle. Okay, we need to look at the costs, we need to look at the deliverables, we need to look at the at the time that it takes. Are there any questions? Yo, we're quiet tonight, aren't we? Well, we've got a few minutes for questions, if there are any questions. Wasn't much interaction tonight. Hopefully next ones will be there. We can do a lot more. We can have a few more tools to actually have a more interactive session. I'm sorry about tonight being like it is. Are there any questions? All good. No questions. All good. All right. Then I'm going to say good night. No more questions? Good night.